Friday, March 22nd, 2024, and the ladies of The View really stepped in it today. Um, their first topic was supposed to be about the documentary Quiet on the Set, which is about the abuses suffered by um, children and employees of a bunch of Nickelodeon shows. Clearly, none of them watched the documentary because it immediately became a thing about bullying other people with platforms into chiming in on what they may or may not have seen, which is bullshit. But we'll get to that in a second. That was just a bizarre take on the whole thing. The documentary, it's 4 parts. I highly recommend it. It's very good. Um, Detailed abuses from Nickelodeon executives and employees across a bunch of different television programs from the 90s and the early 2000s, from which people like Amanda Bynes, Ariana Grande, Drake Bell, became famous. Um, and it's two. There's two very specific sort of threads of the abuse. One is by Dan Schneider, the executive and executive producer of many of those programs, and the way that he treated um, adults on set, the way that he controlled his sets, the way that he um, sort of sheltered the children and kept them away from adults. But it wasn't about any kind of other than abuse of power. Um, and that he got fired in 2018, I think it was, or 2017. During that whole Me Too movement, and sort of coming up with allegations, there were a bunch of allegations against him. Nickelodeon did an investigation, and they severed ties with him immediately. And he's basically he'd done nothing since then. Um, the other thread was about sexual abuse, and it was very specific. There were 3 different men who were convicted sex offenders, child sex offenders, who worked on programs on Nickelodeon. One of them went to jail. He had abused Drake Bell. Drake Bell was in the documentary discussing this. He's the one who got the guy prosecuted and put in jail. Because he was a minor at the time, it was sealed, so he didn't have to do anything publicly. But he was in the courtroom um, when that happened. He went through all of the detail and all of the digging up the trauma of that um, through the prosecution. Has had a tough time since then, that he admits and talks through about substance and alcohol abuse, because of the sort of the shame spiral that comes. But he didn't. That wasn't a public um, uh, event for him. It was still it was 2003 ish, um, when all of that trial stuff went down. So it wasn't like the sort of the we didn't have the social media sort of intrusiveness that we do now. And so he was able to sort of get through that process without it becoming a huge public event. He chose by himself to speak publicly about it and be, I am the guy, I'm the minor that this happened to, and he spoke in enough detail and about what the whole thing was, and not the sexual abuse, but what the whole case was, and how it happened, and where it came from, and what it did to him and his family, and um, in the process of telling these sort of 2 stories about the abuse and the sort of the rise of Dan Schneider in Nickelodeon. Yes, it uses other people like Amanda Bynes and uh, Ariana Grande, clips of them and things that seemed that may have been, because in the second half of Dan Schneider's tenure, it was the content that seemed inappropriate. It wasn't behavior towards them; it was just what they were asked to do on screen started to feel inappropriate for multiple different reasons, whether it be physical, emotional, or pseudo sexual, because there was a lot of sexual innuendo, and these people are, these are kids. Um, and so all of the child actors that were in it told their stories and how it affected them. Um, it's bizarre to me that there was no fallout other than Dan Schneider losing his job. There there really is no apparent recourse, I guess, unless there's more specific allegations that haven't come up. Um, he then issued an apology, which was half-hearted at best. Um, he did, when Drake Bell was talking about, his court case, he did tell Dan Schneider, "This is me. I'm, when the Nickelodeon employee was on trial." Um, and Schneider was very supportive of him. What do you need? Obviously, well, he'll never be around you again. We'll never, deal with him. We'll never work with him again. Um, and so it's not like he was some complete monster, but it does sound like he was an egomaniacal and kind of immature. It's like an emotionally immature executive, which there are a ton of those in Hollywood. I'm not saying it's an excuse, but it's like, specifically around that time, late '90s, mid early 2000s, there was a lot of people getting away with a lot of shit. So it wasn't that uncommon. It all comes to light later, um, when people are like, "Hey, that wasn't right. What happened to me when I was a kid?" Um, and there's more agency for people who are adults who were witnessing it to stand up and say, "Hey, that wasn't right to do at all." Um, but for Sonny to say you have to use your platform and say something and force a statement from Ariana Grande, she may have a completely different feel and take on the whole thing. She may not be any aware of anything. She's not required to say one fucking thing. I wish Whoopi were there to sort of school her. It's like, it's no, yes, use your platform for good. Is silence complicity? Yes, but we don't even know if she knows anything. So you don't beat her up for not saying anything. That's not fair. Um, it's that's then you become the bully, right? To someone else's potential trauma. How is that fair? You tell me about what bad thing happened to you, and you tell me on air. That's cruel. So fuck you, Sonny. No, that's not what is required of people that have a platform. And do you have to speak out on every single issue that happens everywhere? I don't see you doing that. What about all the allegations of bullying on the View set? Did you have an opinion about that? Ugh. It's so hypocritical. And then let's get to the next hypocritical discussion. They did some, I don't know, if it's a Reddit or a TikTok poll or whatever, asking women and men, is the other sex necessary? Are men necessary? Are women necessary? And what a stupid fucking question. And then to have it as a topic, and fuck you, Anna Navarro. The first thing she says is, "No, we don't need men. They're useless. Men are useless." Fuck you. Um, if a man said that about all women, no. And why do you think those answers went the way they did in that poll? Um, that doesn't work that way. And then that whole trope about you know men are useless and would be nothing without us, and then perpetuating it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're going to continue to take care of all of the things um, that make men useless, and then to minimize all gay men as great gossips and good at accessorizing. Fuck you, Anna Navarro. Um, that that is offensive and in some weird way an appropriation. Like you don't take away my gaze. Fuck you. We're not here for you. It's not like our entire existence is for your enjoyment and entertainment. No, that's not the point either. And then of course, Sonny is ridiculously traditional and it's like, I need a man to get the spider and take out the garbage. And is that what you're teaching your teenage daughter? Is that she needs a man, that she's not going to be able to, she's not going to be capable of taking care of herself and taking care of her own needs? Because that's the message. That's what everybody should be being taught. You don't need anyone. You should figure out how to be self-reliant so that the people that you have in your life are invited in, that you want there, who are supporting your life and your ambitions and your existence, as opposed to they're there for a necessity and you have to have them because they fulfill some particular role. No, you want people around. you shouldn't have to need people around. And that goes for any gender, any relationship. Like the whole idea that you're not complete unless you found your person is bullshit. And the fact that Sunny would sit there, as I'm sure she would call herself a feminist, and say that she needs a man, that that's a bizarre hypocrisy to me. Um, and I loved that Hillary, sorry, she sounds a lot like her when she speaks, but Chelsea Clinton came on and gave a very political sort of response to that question. Is that I would hope that we would all recognize and see how we might need each other. And again, I'm going to say need is too strong of a word. How we might want each other in our lives. But that whole idea that it's necessary is just nonsense. Oh, so that's a Friday. Fuck you to the View today.